ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans, sports fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show featuring Clay Hall. But if you notice, Clay Hall seems to be taking Fridays off now. You know, he just kind of keeps me updated. Now, he's a good man. When he retired, he meant to retire totally, you know, and I've talked him, dragged him out of it a little bit because I thought he and I would make a decent little tag team. And I enjoy. But man, I love having this co-pilot step into this or slide into the seat on occasion. Matt Wilhelm, you've been a fixture on the Tim May Show for a long time, man. Welcome back to the cockpit.
Yeah, it's great to be with you, Tim. Again, there's a buzz in the air given that spring practice has started not only for the Buckeyes, but many schools across the country. And again, I think we as a fan base are, voided for a couple of months with no football, and we're between NFL free agency and the combine, and it's like football is now, kind of back, not back in full swing, but back in swing for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ohio State, they've been doing this for many years. They get a couple of practices under their belt for spring ball. And then, of course, Ohio State has its school-wide spring break, or whatever you want to call it. I forgot what kind of highfalutin name they've got for it. I'm sure spring break was politically incorrect. But
Easter break is definitely politically incorrect.
Yeah. But the bottom line is they're off for a week now after having two practices this week in spring. And I think the idea was before where spring break falls for Ohio State, it's kind of hard to get those 15 in before spring semester is over. And
you actually. So I know that again, going back to like Mason's recruiting process, I think like University of Maryland, is one of the schools that has like an April 28th or something like that spring game.
Yeah.
So they're backloaded, like you said, and it is tough. And I think it's and I actually, ironically, was doing some traveling last week, and I was in Nashville. I'm standing there, and the offensive line coach who was recruiting Mason from Vanderbilt comes walking by because he's going to a glazier clinic.
Wait, where were you? Where were you?
I was in Nashville.
Well, I know Nashville, but I mean,
I was in the airport. I was
the airport. Okay.
From Broadway, and was down there on some business. But I'm standing there just waiting for my flight to come back to Cleveland. And Chris Kalanakis is his name. He's the offensive line coach at at Vanderbilt. And I stopped him to say hello because they were, hot and heavy on Mason as a recruit. And I told him, hey, Mason starts Tuesday, Thursday. He goes, you know what? He goes, I wish we did that. And so I think it's just an opportunity to, again, really take your time on I know the practice is the practice, and you want the guys to go out and execute what you've taught them, and you're seeing them for the first time in a helmet. But I think what you want to start, as much as the physical shift of football for some of these young men, it's the mental shift.
Yes.
And so what that means is, yes, they have a workout on Monday, and I'm talking about Ohio State, and then a practice on Tuesday, but you get an evening install, with your position coach to then go do it on Tuesday, again, meeting, walkthrough, practice. Then you review the practice, you go over the install, and review the install, and then you install for Thursday. You have all day Wednesday, another workout day, recovery day, with Coach Marati and his staff, and then another install on what you're going to do Thursday. And it just, I think more so than anything, like we sometimes as fans or outsiders think it's so much about that 2 hours they spend on the football field. Mm-hmm. And some people might go, well, why'd you do 2? And then you're going to have a week off. It is so much so getting these young men, and even, even some of the vets, or some of the guys that are in flux on, are they a 2 or are they a 1? They're in a competition to become a starter potentially, or a contributor at a high level. Is the mental shift of the X's and O's that their mind has been voided of since early January, because it's been all about the weight room. So the mental shift is as important as it is for the actual tangible practices of you going out and executing it ahead of as spring ball really gets rolling.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, and that's the way it was explained. Urban Meyer explained that to me. But Ryan has said the same thing. It's all about getting it. Those first 2 practices, they're not throwaways by any stretch. I mean, they go on your permanent record, but it's more about getting you, like you said, your mind of what's going to be expected over the next 3.5, 4 weeks. And you're right. It is. You go from like Mickey Marotti and pulling ropes and all kinds of competitions and stuff to now practicing real football. And
Yeah.
that's what really impresses me about the first couple of practices is how everybody pretty much, like you said, has lines up in the right place and for the most part runs the right pass routes or the right, run for a running back. And the defenders go to the right places for the most part. That's not magic.
It's not. And again, that's part of the meeting process too. I
Yeah.
think the best word that I know, kind of going back to the high school level that is kind of mandatory as, training camp gets started, where you do, a couple of days in helmets, then a couple of days in just uppers, and then you get into full pads, is acclimation.
Yeah.
And I think these 2 days, as a strategy are acclimation days. Acclimation from an organization standpoint, organization from an install standpoint, those X's and O's, the mental aspect, and then going out and doing it again. Because to your point, everyone is, in a tizzy about, Jeremiah's physical structure with another year, another winter with Maradi going into year 3 and how he looks in uniform.
By the way, he looks quite impressive.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and that's part of it. But I think the acclimation of the football acclimation, needs to be a thing. And I think to get out there and, and to your point, the organization aspect of it, even just, again, talking to Mason, it's like the tempo of practice because, and that's the other resounding message that I think has come out of at least the first practice, and everybody was, kind of regurgitating it. And the second practice was 51 new players. It's kind of an uncharted territory for, a school like Ohio State to have 51 new guys that need to show up on time, 51 guys that need to know where to be, 51 guys that need to acclimate to the tempo of practice, 51 guys that need to know what to do, so that, the work isn't being diminished from an organizational standpoint. So you can get, you get the plays done, you get the execution done, you get what you want to get on film and the drills that you want to get done on film, and that way you can go back and have, and that's one thing I'll think a lot of people discount too, is the amount of time that players and coaches, even on those 2 days of practice over the next, say, 10 to 14 days, yes, everyone's going to hit the eject button in some capacity from football, but you're going to have that on your iPad, on your, on your laptop to be able to log in and watch yourself over and over and over again. Is it your feet? Is it your hand placement? Is it your footwork? Is it your pad level in any specific drill or play? And a coach too, that coach to player interaction that kind of happens sometimes behind closed scenes or behind closed doors that just keeps inching these guys closer to, understanding the installs and executing them to the level that they want this early in spring.
Absolutely. I mean, when you've got, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, this is the opening. I'm going to talk to Matt for a while now, but we're going to get into a little more in depth of, the idea. I've been saying this for like several months now when people ask me, what do I expect them to really work on or bring about over the next several months before they open the season. The season, one of the things I always bring up is getting more willing running from Julian Sayin. So I'll have a little bit of that from Ryan Day's standpoint, also from Julian Sayin's standpoint in the second part of this podcast. But like you're talking about, Matt, and by the way, before we move on, I do want to ask you, what's the excitement level for you as an Ohio State alum, a guy who spilt blood for Ohio State, et cetera, won a national championship in football, to see Jake Diebler in the basketball team, the way it refound itself near the end of this season? It's a lock to make the NCAA tournament now. They won their first tournament game in the Big Ten. As we record this, they're about to start the second tournament game. It'll be against Michigan. Michigan, I think, is the best team in the country this year. So whatever comes from that comes from that. But to see Jake Diebler and this team get their act together in sort of a must-win situation, not just for the team, but for the head coach. What does it do for you as an alum of Ohio State?
Well, I think it's fantastic that you have the basketball program, and just to deviate quickly, like from an NIL standpoint or a rev share standpoint, the second largest asset, besides football at most schools, winning at the level that you want. And I think, what I find is, I know there's been a shift, to Diebler, a couple of years ago, but you look around college football, some of the programs, Arizona State and Syracuse, they're firing their coaches, and you've got a guy who, again, you said, I shed blood. Diebler shed blood as a Buckeye too, as a player. So to have a former player.
No, wait a minute. His brother did. He played he played elsewhere.
Then I'm mistaken. Okay, then I'm mistaken. Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But
okay,
a Diebler has shed blood.
Diebler, yes, exactly. So again, it goes to show how much I follow Ohio State basketball over the last.
Yeah, no, it's okay, brother.
But that said, him having the pride to take that job, and I think in many cases, continue to lead the team. Continue to lead the young men, as opposed to just kind of like teetering around 500. Continuing to chew away at that opportunity. And I think there's an immense amount of pride. There's a lot of schools, more so than there is at the college football level, but at the college basketball level, there's a boatload of schools that make themselves eligible to make the March Madness or NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
And so to put yourself in a situation and kind of in many cases, like kind of control your own destiny where but have a team that's hungry to go out and wants to continue to extend that season. I think it says a lot about the brotherhood and the culture that we talk about a lot at Ohio State from a football standpoint. That is being built, on the football side where these guys just want to play for each other. They're not looking towards NBA. They're not looking towards whatever transfer portal can, potentially open and whatever those dates are. They're bonding together to make a run and have an opportunity to do something very special. To your point about against Michigan, what a lot of people feel is the number one team in the country and has been most of the year.
Yep. Oh yeah. Extremely talented. I think the entire starting lineup is transfer portal guys, but hey, that's the world we live in now, and segueing back to Ohio State football, this is not going to be a tattletale show the next several years while Mason is playing for the Buckeyes, your son.
Definitely not.
But I do want to ask this. I mean, this is a general thing. What has he told you now since he's been involved with the program now for 3 months, just about the expectation level once you're there? You were there, you played there, you were on a national championship team. You almost have to, you can tell him all you want, right? But you almost have to experience the expectation level that permeates not just the building, but the city, the state, et cetera, right? I mean,
so
I'm sure he's mentioned that.
Yeah. Expectation, excuse me. Expectation is an amazing word. I think the other word that the 51 new players have to adapt to, and this is, again, coming out of winter workouts with Matt drills, is intensity.
Yes.
For some of the other players at Bama, I know maybe under, Kalen DeBoer or, at Duke with Manny Diaz, at Florida State, with Norvell, like there's going to be some intensity and they're going to do things that they think are going to help them win. But to do it the way that Mick Marotti has done it, at Ohio State, to keep us where we want to stay as a, perennial top 10 program competing for a national championship every year, which you can't say Duke does, which you can't say Florida State has been, which you can't say maybe Bama has since, Saban really left.
Yeah. It's only been 2 years, man. Give them time.
Oh, I know. But the expectations of this program and the expectations and the intensity of this program are different than other places. And I think, to go back to a clip that you may play or you may not, but it's like, Julian Sayin, as it relates to him running, his narrative about how Mick Marotti challenges him physically, in that weight room to have him be able to, take hits and, grow his body at the quarterback position while also being, physically gifted and very technical. But also challenging him as a leader. And that's the emotional side of the emotional leadership that comes from the guys in that weight room as well. And I think that's, there's no workout you can do. Mason came from one of the top programs in the state of Ohio. A lot of these other recruits are coming from, Buford, Georgia, top program in the country. Yeah. There's nowhere you can come from that's going to be ready for the level of expectation and the intensity that's going to happen every day within the walls of the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, specifically in the weight room in the meeting rooms and out on the practice field, which, you got to see Tuesday and Thursday. So I think there's a little bit of like, holy shit moment for a lot of these guys of, whoa, like this is different,
Yes.
and it smacks you in the face. And that's where I think, maybe, me as Mason's dad and, nurturing, that intensity and talking him through it. I'm like, I guess I can just say, the work is the work, it's, the work is unknown, but it has to be done. Get your ass up and go do it,
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that I find myself, and maybe I can relate to him on another level that many other parents can, is because I've done it. I've worked so hard that it's made me throw up. So when you work really, really hard and you throw up, you're not doing anything that I didn't do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not recreating a wheel. And I go, and oh, by the way, it's like it's you and a half dozen other guys that are working their ass off so hard that they're throwing up in between their reps. And it's that level of intensity that they have, they've not experienced before. But over the course of those, 8 weeks of winter, they've adapted. And it's like, and then the growth, the maturity, the physical maturity of their body, the intensity is, not as intense. And I think at the end of the day, and again, maybe at some point we're going to hear from Coach Marotti throughout the spring, but just how spring went and the growth of players. And I think lastly, to bring it all full circle about what Coach Marotti means to Ohio State and Ohio State football is look at the players at the combine and what they did.
Yeah.
What Sonny Styles did at the combine, what Lorenzo Styles did at the combine, how Cornell State, ran, all that body maturity that you get at Ohio State. And that's not to say that other places don't have it. We just have it very consistently.
Yeah. Yeah. As to sum up, ladies and gentlemen, the road to success is paved with throw up. But it really is. I'm talking about every sport, man. It's not just football, but the gaining somehow, some way, obtaining the talent level that you have to compete on the elite level in any sport, but then gaining the person that you have to have from a willingness to put in the work that doesn't kill you, but it feels like it's going to a few times. Probably.
Tim, and that's the one thing that I've said, and I've given, I give high school kids, that stick it out and play football, whether they're a starter and they're a dude going to D1, or whether they're a kid just, competing to play at the varsity level. I give, young men who are doing hard things a lot of credit, because while their buddies, who don't play football or wrestle or play basketball or don't train are, at the beach or at the amusement park, bird dogging chicks, you're choosing to do something you're choosing torture, mental and physical torture in some capacity, via the game that you love for an opportunity to compete, at a place. This place just happens to be, one of the top places in the country.
Let me ask you this though, as a former player, high school, college, and NFL, on a Super Bowl champion team, et cetera, and a national championship team. Well, where do you grab the daylight? Meaning, when you're out there working your rear end off and a coach is just upbraiding you after every other rep, how tough is it to separate somebody, because you're a coach too, somebody being up your rear end about something, but also understand he's doing it for your benefit.
Yeah.
How tough is that to separate? You follow my drift?
It's not.
You know what? This guy's right.
It's not that tough, because you have to also, that's the emotional maturity that comes with also being in that building.
But not everybody's emotionally built that way. Go ahead.
You can't, but you can't take it personal. In today's world, in 2026, everybody takes even a little, stab between friends can be taken personally now, because of the way that the world works right now. A social media post can be taken, overly over the top and to become a thing, right? So you have to and that's part of, mental, emotional maturity of these young men. I think also understanding that this is the environment that they chose with the people to do it with. And I think that's what's unique about the recruiting process in hindsight, is like, Mason, and I'm not trying to say there's other places don't do it hard, but like I'm choosing the hard, the discipline, for the, to play long game, to play end game. I'm choosing to have this coach be the guy that, holds me accountable and tells me when it's not good enough, and then loves on me when I do something good, and and again, for those folks that are out there that are parents, it's parenting, coaching is parenting, it's mentoring, it's teaching. And so what environment do you want to do it in and who do you want to do it with is really not about how much money they're going to pay you. It's good. Those are the two big factors, at least when it relates to, our process. We want to be at the place with these people doing what is hard, and holding me accountable. And I think that's what also beyond just the structure of, you say, the coaches is, I think to kind of really put a bow on your question, Tim, is what's great so far via Mason is, and even just being on the Buckeye Cruise for Cancer and meeting some of the, meeting Luke Montgomery and spending some time with him, and Austin Sierreveld, and Carson Hinsman, some of the guys that Mason's going to rub elbows with every day as his teammates on the Buckeye Cruise, which raised $4.6 million for cancer research.
That's crazy, isn't it? That's crazy.
Yeah. We're going for $5 million next year in the 20-year anniversary. Book it.
You rich people, y'all have a good time on that.
Yes, we do. Is the player-to-player accountability. Okay. So it doesn't always have to be coach or coaches ripping you a new one. It's a player who's now been in the program maybe 3, 4, 5 years, like the guys I just mentioned. Maybe calling you out, maybe holding you accountable, or maybe putting their arm over your shoulder when the coach has ripped you a new asshole, and they can share a story from when they were a freshman in the spring and they messed something up or couldn't get a drill down for, 3, 4 practices in a row. Yeah. They felt like a piece of what. The coach kind of put them in their place. And then it takes, your brother putting your arm over their shoulder going, dude, you're fine. You know what I mean? I got you. We'll work on it after practice. We'll get it. And then bang, it clicks. And you're like, this is the place that I love. This is why I'm here with the people that and it's that, and every place doesn't have that, because some places are very cutthroat about who's a starter, who's a two, who, the two guys that are competing for a spot don't like each other.
Right.
And it seems as if outside looking in, have not been down no practice, that these guys, they want to compete like those two guys, and then those are the same two guys that are having dinner together later, or might be living together as roommates, or or both in the weight room work. Marati pairs them as workout partners all day. You know what I mean? And you're constantly around him. It's like, I can't hate this dude because he's awesome. He's a good player. He works his ass off, and I like him. You know what I mean? And I think that's an environment that Coach Day, has maintained year over year the last 3, 4, 5 years he's been there.
Yeah. And to me, you can correct me if I'm wrong. When you're a player like you or Mason had to pay his dues at St. Ed's, but he became one of the great players in the state, as his career went on. You understand what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
When he's on that practice field at St. Ed's, he's one of the kings,
Yeah, sure.
And you were the same way in high school. And then you get to college, and there is a collegiality, pardon the pun, about being on a college football team. Not everybody's going to be your best buddy, but I would correct me if I'm wrong. There's a sense that y'all are all working for the common good, that when your time comes, your time will come. If you keep busting your rear end. Yeah. You showed up as a superstar out of high school who now is mixed in with guys as good as you are in some respects and kind of hits you funny. But when those guys put their arm around you and become your friend, helping you grow as a player and a person, you get that. But then you move to the NFL, and dude, you show up in the NFL, you're trying to take a grown man's job away from him.
Yeah.
And I would think college is the consummate mixing pot of guys who, well, now are getting paid, but they're all sort of working for the common theme. You follow my drift of being teammates in the truest sense, because once you move on to the NFL, it's not just that you're trying to take that other guy's job. The guys running the team are trying to find a guy better than you. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
All the time. Now, it's that way in college football too, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But when you look back on college, it is going to be the best time of your life in terms of that. In terms of that collegiality, team kind of building kind of feeling. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're absolutely right. And I think for, in many cases, young men, and I know what 26 or 27 early enrollees, we can talk about at Ohio State that make
crazy.
Almost 50% of those 51 new faces in the program is, and you and I know this each and every year. Again, I'll say expectations of these young men to come in and contribute, in year one, like 15 to 20% of those guys, you might actually see, in spots in games that actually matter throughout the 2026 football season. I'll say last year it was Bo Jackson, Sanchez, the corner. Who else did we even see as a true freshman?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. But keep talking. I hear what you're saying. Yeah,
Isaiah West.
Yeah, Isaiah West.
But it's like, at a place like Ohio State, you choose it, and I think that the focus is on, especially as an offensive lineman, is to play the long game. And that's in many cases my message to, I'd say this to any young man, where a red shirt is kind of inevitable, is like, literally zip your lip and work your tail off for 18 months and don't lift your head up.
Yeah.
Because like the expectation of you going out there and contributing, on a national championship level football team, like that may be, and I know it's still early, but everybody's pegging him as this, is like Chris Henry Jr. might be like the one guy that jumps out and goes, he's going to line up at extra Z, maybe it's the fourth or fifth receiver and help us this season.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
But a lot's got to happen between now and August for that to be a reality, and then you can rattle off, maybe based on depth on the depth chart, which I haven't memorized yet, another guy or two. Otherwise, everyone else is working and competing, to slot themselves and position themselves in 2027 and 2028, and to your point, they're going to add another 2027 recruiting class and a 2028 recruiting class with guys that are going to come in and think they're going to be the next second coming. Yeah. So there's a patience to this process. There's a patience to it. But I would also say, you and I can rattle off, and I think that, Arvell Reese is the best example of something like this. Arvell Reese from Glenville was a freak athlete coming in at probably 210, 215 pounds. There was an excitement about him coming to Ohio State. He was nameless and faceless as a freshman. He was a garbage time backup player as a second year player at Ohio State. And then Cody Simon and, these guys all leave. And it's like, bam, this guy that's worked his ass off for the last 24 months in this structure, in this program, is primed to be a dude.
Yeah.
And go look what Arvell Reese did for the 2025 football season and how he's positioned himself, 3 years out of high school to enter into the NFL draft and potentially be a top 5 pick.
Yeah. Matt Patricia comes along at the right time, but what? Jim Knowles was going to see the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You couldn't miss Arvell Reese last year, et cetera. But yeah, Matt Patricia came along with a different way, a little bit of a different way of like sprinkling those sprinkles, as I called it, on the chocolate sundae. You know what I mean? You get putting those sprinkles on there. And
I think when you hear Matt Patricia talk, I think what he does better than anybody is the chess piece.
Yes.
And he doesn't chess piece just players. He chess pieces his structure.
Yes.
Meaning 5 down, 3 down, 4 down, safety, nickel, and again, you never really knew where Arvell was going to line up and what he was going to do. And I think as the season went on, Sonny Styles kind of, although he was the off-ball backer, you didn't know what he was going to do or where he was going to blitz from.
Right.
Caleb Downs, became a chess piece for us. God, would you love him in the middle of the field safety because he's, because of his range, but then you want him in the box as a tackler because he got the guy to the ground, as well as anybody. And was also a great blitzer. So also another guy positioned to be a top 10 pick because of, to your point, Matt Patricia, the NFL game and his ability to, those players that at the right level mentally can receive that information and then go apply it. And we hope now with Arthur Smith on the offensive side to do the very same thing for the offensive players, given he's been a offensive coordinator and a head coach in the NFL.
Amen. I'm just writing something down. I want to ask you at the near the end. I want to interrupt right now, but I do want to ask this. Did y'all play Glenville the last couple of years? the big kid, the Perez kid,
Jameer Perez.
Yeah. Well, what was your take on him then? I mean, this guy, in my opinion, he's 360, but he's a squared up 360. You understand what he's not carrying a huge gut or anything. And those 2 days we got to watch him, the first 2 days, I go, where's the next Caden McDonald going to come from? And I watch this guy run around. He has pretty damn good feet for a guy 360.
Yeah.
And I'm just, man, those guys are so freak in their own way. Like I've told you many times, I think the hardest thing to find is that A-gap dude.
Yeah.
Even more so than a quarterback, because they are few and far between. But I didn't give him as much credence as maybe I should have during the recruiting game. But just what's your take on him? Does he have potential?
He does have potential. I think the one thing and the reason why, you may not have given the appropriate credence was, well, first of all, I think Sincere Johnson and who he is as a player,
yes,
has a lot to thank Jameer Perez chewing up, guard center guard for the last couple of years at the high school level at, 350 to 380, to allow Sincere to just scrape and make plays and be the next Arvell Reese, right, coming from Glenville now in the Scarlet and Gray.
And wait a minute, let me interrupt. And speaking of a guy who could contribute in some form or fashion this year, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Jameer Perez is a senior. And again, I'm speaking to, Coach Ginn at Glenville also, and, talking to even, Mark Pantoni here and there throughout the recruiting process and on the Buckeye Cruise. Jameer Perez was a guy that was kind of injury plagued as a senior. And because he was injury plagued, probably played a little bit heavier than he would have liked to.
Yeah.
But I think he's also a guy, early enrolls, works his tail off with Coach Marotti and the strength coach's staff that gets his body not all the way back, but positions his body as a true freshman to be able to go in there and flash the way that he has on a couple of practices at, 6'5", 6'6", or whatever, 6'5", 360 pounds. To your point, again, tall guy versus, Caden McDonald, maybe 6'2", he's going to have to, his pad level is going to have to be lower. But I know going back to, the high school level, he was an immovable object in there, that has to take two. And when you have that guy, sacrificially in your defense to just dominate inside, it makes the three techniques job easier. It makes the ends jobs easier. It definitely makes the backers job easier because that guard's not ricking up to him really quick and and you have to take on a guard. You can scrape and make plays.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, dude, those are the kind of guys that get me excited when I watch a football team develop. And we're watching Larry Johnson put those guys through some drills in practice even on Thursday. And they were doing this little drill, like basically a get off drill, but they were down next to the wall. They had these pads up on the wall, blocking dummies up on the wall, but they were down their stance. They were having to pick up a Belgian bag. I think it's like a 35 pounder. I may be wrong on how big the Belgian bag was, but each had to pick up a Belgian bag and then go, right into the blocking dummy. And it was great because I heard Larry Johnson say something. He was trying to work on Perez's footwork about staying pretty much square, as opposed to whatever. And he goes, man, use your God's gift. You've got a God's gift there, meaning in terms of immovable object.
Yeah, big old
yourself.
Butt. Yeah.
Now don't give it away by slew footing. You know what I mean? Get on up in there and make this guy. If he gets you, he has to run all the way over you. And it was just cool to watch. Maybe in my opinion, is as good, if not the best defensive line coach in the country, already working on refining skills of this new player on how good he can be, the presence he can be there if he does things rudimentally the right way, right? And that's what you catch up, because you get, like I said, even with Mason, Sam Greer, wow, he's impressive looking, man. That is a huge human being.
Yes, it is.
And they're doing these little drills where he's kicking his foot up like a rocket, you know what I mean, and touching his foot with his hand. I go, that's something you don't see every day, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
But they've all gotten away in high school about being the BMOC or the BMOF, the biggest man on the field, and to get out of those little rudiments or those little bad habits they've developed it takes a while, right? And that's
it absolutely does. And I think that's what I'm going to find the most joy in through, the 4 or 5 years is like, just like Mason's graduating class at St. Ed's. It's like, you have this bond that gets created as a class with when you go and what you go out and what you accomplish both individually and collectively, represents, your class. I think, this class, a lot of flips, Mason included, Landry Breed, late, Caden Gebhart, flipped late.
Yep.
I think, was it the kid from Colorado,
Legend Bay
flips from Tennessee, or flip flop, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I think there's going to be, a natural, deeper following for me. And I think it really, for me, it also gave me an introspective look at roster construction, given the time period that we're in right now with the emphasis. And again, for all we know, this might be the last and largest recruiting class Ohio State has for the foreseeable future until there's some other, potential rule changes, given development and marrying that with winning now and competing for the Big Ten championship and a national championship the way that Ohio State is expected to each and every year. You saw that, in the roster construction with the other portal guys we lost and what we added via the portal, finding those 4th and 5th year guys that are going to come in. And I think you heard Ryan Day say it at the podium, like rattling off a couple of receivers and the safeties. It's like, he's like, oh, these are pros. These are dudes that played a lot of ball, you know? And so I would not expect, and I was going to be exact same production that we got out of Caleb Downs and other guys at other players at Carnell Tate at receiver, probably not. But the fact that he's going to say that they're pros, that means they're about their business. That means they're on time. They come to work. They're accountable. They're attentive. And now they need to do it because they're wearing their black stripes, as a Buckeye in scarlet and gray.
Yeah. What they were looking for there was instant maturity of rooms. I mean, throwing a veteran in this room and that room and that room goes a long way. Now as Kenyatta Jackson pointed out, these guys still have to are still in the process of learning the Ohio State way of doing things, meaning like you're talking about what's expected in the weight room from an effort standpoint, what's expected in the off-season drills standpoint, and even the way you go about conducting yourself in practice and stuff. But I wanted to ask you this. I would think Mason and some of those other offensive line recruits had to take heart that the one place they didn't really bring anybody in from the outside, except for one kid from Dartmouth who, we're still scratching our head a little bit on that one, but seems like a really good kid. We know he's smart, and he's a veteran, but they have put their chips offensive line wise on these guys, meaning, I wanted to use the word chips for these guys. Those are the chips they're going to play with on the offensive line this year, is guys they've recruited pretty much whole hog. And that's got to be encouraging for the guys in the offensive line room, doesn't it? That
it absolutely is. I think I look at it, but
also daunting in the fact that you got to get going now. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I look at it two ways. I look at it as the immediacy, meaning like them coming back, because we saw in 2024, what it meant to have those veteran guys come back and how that turned into production. And to your point about adding veteran players through the portal is like the maturity that comes. So it's twofold. It's twofold for me as a dad of an offensive lineman at Ohio State and who's also a former player at Ohio State. I look at it as a gift of them coming back. They were also probably the last couple of games of the season, probably the most highly criticized between the Indiana game and the Miami game. Most criticized group that might have put a little governor on our ability to go win a national championship because of their play, right?
Yes.
So those guys all come back. The spotlight is on them to perform as multi-year starters and having most of the nucleus, back. And then you've got the competition of what's going to happen between Van Sickle, Padilla, Ian Moore on the right side, either a guard or a tackle, right?
Yes.
But then also on the other side of it is, I look at, you're going to lose likely Searveld, you're going to lose Montgomery, you're going to lose Hinsman, and potentially, depending on how he plays, Phillip Daniels, who I think actually has 1 year left after this year, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so that's 4 of the 5 guys. And then you've got, again, the Van Sickles, the Padillas, the Ian Moores, the Armstrongs, the Jake Cooks, and then we'll say Max Riley, Mason Wilhelm, Sam Greer, like this, the 2026 guys, all in this conundrum. Like, and I know fast forward 2027, like in spring is going to be this hyper competitive on like you're good. You know, a coach might go, I'm going to pencil in this guy, but every day is going to be a competition to see who plays.
Oh yeah.
Because then on the flip side, you know, there's going to be, and I would also say, if I were, again, a betting man, I think that Mark Pantoni and Ryan Day are not going to sit idle and wait for that development to happen. You know, inter-roster, which is what you want. There's going to be some of that, but you're going to probably go out and add probably 2 dudes in the portal, you know, to come in and bring that experience of 20-some game starter, because at that point in 2027, you've got a bunch of guys that haven't played a lot of football. Like exactly. No one's going to have 15 plus starts, you know, unless say, you know, Ian Moore, Gabe Van Sickle, or Padilla start this season and play every game. They're going to be the most experienced linemen coming back in 2027.
Yes.
So it's going to be a bunch of new faces competing for those spots.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, you can already see what spring 2027 is going to look like. It's going to be cool as hell. Hey, last thing, because you and I, you're going to be on here quite a few times here in the spring. But I did want to ask about the specter of a Julian Sayin who's willing or will run a little more this fall. That was missing last year with a few exceptions. I mean, he had a couple of runs against Michigan that were key, right on down, but in those 2 playoff games where the Big Ten championship game, and then of course against Miami, dude, I would think he had a hard time just thinking back there against Miami. Though, like I said, it wasn't the pass rush. It was the pass crush sometimes where he got crushed. And to think that, that suddenly Julian Sayin is going to be Lamar Jackson is kind of stupid for anybody to think. But to add that specter that, hey, you know what? You hassle this guy, he's going to get out on you. He's going to step up in the middle and take off into green pastures there. Just to add that threat of this coming year. And Ryan Day has, talked about it openly, because you could see it. I mean, last year he was a first-year starting quarterback. You just wanted him to run the plays, right? And I thought, him getting out on the edge quite a bit and throwing the ball and stuff, that created a lot of things. But, man, there were a couple times when he'd just tucked it and ran, especially against Miami in a couple situations, because all they needed against Miami and Indiana was one more touchdown when you look at it.
A couple of first downs that led to a touchdown,
Yeah, first down. But I just mean keep a drive going to that other touchdown.
Yep.
My point is, you as a defensive guy, what would that add from the workload from a defensive standpoint going against this guy who, if you give him time, is extremely accurate throwing the football? You follow my drift there. So coverage has to be on point, but you know what? Hey, he may take off.
So that's a great question. I think that's something that, even at the high school level, when you study a quarterback, where does he like to escape?
Yeah.
Is you always have to be, is it the parting of the sea and he steps up and takes off and run, kind of like what Joe Burrow likes to do the most, because Joe Burrow's not an around the edge kind of guy. It's like when, the line kind of opens up, he kind of takes off and you'll get those yards. I think Josh Allen, now will run everywhere, but, does that very, very well, especially when he sees man coverage with a bunch of backs turned.
Yeah. Mendoza did it great for Indiana.
Yeah, and I think that's you're actually kind of like sort of indirectly stealing my thunder. I think combination of what you're okay. I think Julian Sayin working his tail off to physically be able to take off and run and potentially take some of those hits, right? And I'm not trying to say that he couldn't do that last year. He just didn't, right? But I think the mindset situationally to be able to take off and run, it's debilitating for a defense. And I've said this, many times on this kind of show, is you got great coverage, you get great pressure, and the QB ekes out, and just extends that drive, and it's first down again. It's just
start all over.
It's defeating as a defense. So I think, and this is what the offseason in many cases, maybe not necessarily spring ball, because that's going to be your focus, but then after spring ball, Or, and again, maybe practice in spring ball is Coach Day or Coach Fessler, or Arthur Smith, pull in clips of, say, Fernando Mendoza or Carson Beck, just two guys that, played for the Natty last year that took off and, made some plays with their legs. Or a situation, go back to the Michigan game and showing Julian Sayin, taking off and running and, and kind of patting him on the back for that. And then I think Arthur, these guys like even Matt Patricia and Arthur Smith pulling cut-ups of, Tom Brady, not fleet of foot, Peyton Manning, not fleet of foot, just Phillip Rivers not taking off fleet of foot, but just taking off and getting that 5 yards.
Yes.
When you need 4.5, right?
Yes.
And getting down or getting out of bounds and not taking that hit and just keeping that drive. And then you look at the outcome of that drive. Is it a field goal? Do you pin them deep inside the 10? Do you score a touchdown on how? And it just over the course of time starts to get ingrained into a quarterback's brain that, yeah, I can do this. And my coaches are asking me to do this because in many cases they might have been, to your point, get lined up, run the motions, run the play, get rid of the football. Throw it to or make your first 3 reads and get rid of the football. And no point of the equation was if they're not there, throw it out of bounds or take off and run.
Yeah.
That has to be coached. And I also think coming out of spring, I hope, that, when they get the pads on and things, liven up a little bit, that Sayin gets enough reps that opportunities to run present themselves against a really, really good defense and a really, really good structure with Matt Patricia, that he does it in the spring and that you can study that. And just, it's a kind of a confidence. He needs a confidence boost to be able to go do it because we know he can. He just doesn't as often, but you want to give him glimpses of him doing it on film in spring practice or in games last year. And then other players and situationally how defeating it is for a defense when you can take off and extend. You can go 1, 2, 3, 4, go back to your check down and you don't feel like you want to check your check down. Then you just take off and run, you get 6 yards and you extend that drive.
Exactly.
It's debilitating. Yeah. And I think, we've known this. And I mean, for years it was Dwayne Haskins wouldn't do it. I think, Justin Fields would, CJ Stroud wouldn't.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised, lastly, as it relates to the quarterback position is, similar to the way that Lincoln Kienholz came in that run only package to go back to your, we're not expecting him to be Lamar Jackson. You got Tavion St. Clair, 6'4" and some change, 200 plus pounds, who in time that if you want to run the quarterback,
yeah, it
could be with him, kind of as Lamar or Josh Allen, not necessarily our, Heisman finalist Julian Sayin.
Yeah. The problem is you don't ever want it to be that predictable, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. You know what I mean? I'm talking about if a guy goes in the game, et cetera. But it's funny because Lincoln Kienholz had that ability. But boy, they got reluctant to use it. Is the best way I think of saying it, reluctant to use it, even though they tried to foster that along as the year went on last year. And now it is what it is. He's playing for Louisville. Will he be the next Lamar Jackson at Louisville? Pardon the expression. Hey, Matt, we're going to come back later. And one of the things, later in the spring, one of the things I want to talk to you about is just specifically, what does it do for a team when you've got two coordinators who were not just coordinators in the National Football League at a high level, but also former head coaches and stuff. You don't have to talk about it now, but I just want to get your take on that because you dealt with coaches at the college, high school, college, and then pro level, and the expertise each of them brought. I want to get into a conversation about that on the next time you're on here because as a player, you hope players are disciplined enough, like we were talking about mental discipline, to understand, boy, what a gold mine this is. I need to mine this gold mine, about this guy can prepare me for the next level, even as he's preparing me to take on, Texas at Texas. I mean, it's kind of a cool situation, isn't it?
It is.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's Matt Wilhelm, and hang on. We're going to get into what Ryan Day had to say about wanting to see Julian Sayin run a little bit more and what Julian Sayin has to say about wanting to see Julian Sayin run a little bit more. Hey, we're just saying. We'll be back in just a moment. Thanks, Matt.
You got it. Anytime.
Always enjoy having Matt Wilhelm around. Anybody's been following the Tim May Show for many years before I moved to the FanStream Sports .com site, and he has great insight in all kinds of ways because he pays attention to football, not just to one team or one individual, like his son Mason, a offensive guard recruit at Ohio State, freshman going through his first spring, etc. But getting back to what we were talking about there at the end of a conversation with Matt is the specter of a quarterback who will run. I'm not talking about a triple option running quarterback or veer option running quarterback, but a quarterback who is a really good passer who occasionally will run. What does that do to a defense? Well, here's the thing. They didn't get that as much as they'd like to have seen from Julian Sayin a year ago. As good as he was throwing the ball, as accurate as he was in historic terms throwing the football, they would like to have seen him run a little bit more, especially in those last two games of the year when, boy, at times Indiana and Miami made mincemeat of Ohio State's offensive line. But to have the willingness to do it, or the ability to do is one thing. To have a willingness to do is another, and then to see those opportunities and feel free to do it. That's the big thing. And quarterbacks mature just like every other position. And you can just tell from talking with Julian Sayin a couple of days ago that, in fact, he knows where he knows where those plays have got to come from. They got to come from him eventually. He even spoke about it in the moments after the loss to Miami down in the Cotton Bowl last year. But let's get to where I think it was Austin Ward asked Ryan Day. This is one of the few times in his tenure as a head coach. I guess one was Justin Fields, the other was C.J. Stroud, when he's had a quarterback back for a second season, in this strange era of college football that we're all living in. But let's just get to what he had to say about Julian Sayin and eventually the specter he could pose by running a little bit more.
So really it was Justin and it was CJ, and now Julian's the only other one shoot that I've had, again, going back a long way. So, the one thing that, Arthur, the minute he spent some time with Julian, he just, he's really intelligent. He can process a lot of high levels of information. And I think we've shared that before. It's one of the things that jumps out about Jules to me. And so, there's certain areas that now he's got to take the next step. Like we say, level up. I was talking to actually Matt about this the other day. He was explaining how, growing up, we used to have Mario Brothers, and, there was like, you would go through all the different levels. And if you lost, you started back in level one, and you had to figure out and solve what the problem was to get to the next level. Now with the video games, you have to level up. You don't really go back to start. We just continue to level up. Well, it's kind of so I tried to hit that with these guys the other day. Like, we all have to level up with our football IQ. So whether it's someone like Aaron Rodgers who's been in the league for decades, or it's, Tavian St. Clair who's in year 2 of the program, or anybody within the program, they have to level up in terms of their football IQ. And the more information you have, the slower the game goes. And so that's a big thing for him, and finding the right things that we can do to help get us into the right play and all the things that come with that. Then the other part, as we know, is, just in terms of understanding where the ball comes out, his strength, and as we all know, is that the ball comes out accurately and throwing the football, but making an impact with his legs when appropriate. We know that that's the X factor that has to show up this year, and he's aware of that and been working hard in the off season.
And Julian was asked this week by our compatriot Dylan Davis of the Delaware Gazette. He was a co-host with me a week ago. One of my favorite people, one of my favorite golf partners now. But he was asked about, has that been a focus for Julian Sayin during the off season, which only lasted right at 3 months. But this is what Julian had to say about it.
Yeah, I think, I've done a lot of stuff with Coach Mick this offseason, and, getting stronger, getting more powerful, and being able to, run through tackles and things like that. That's definitely been a focus of our offseason. So I'm looking forward to improving that this spring.
That's interesting, because in the spring, a lot of getting ready for that, or to do that more, meaning run when the opportunity presents itself, is more mental than it is physical, because you don't want to get a quarterback of the caliber of Julian Sayin beat up in the spring if you can help it, much less injured. So he's and I keep reminding people, this guy was a really good dual threat quarterback in high school back at Carlsbad, California, and had the willingness to run, et cetera. But you have to keep in mind, like I was talking with Matt Wilhelm about, you're so focused as a first year starter on running the offense and stuff. Sometimes some of those natural things you did in high school a few years ago, you almost have to bridle them a little bit because you're focused on running the play, and when you've got weapons around you, like Ohio State presents, especially with Jeremiah Smith and last year with Carnell Tate, and this year with the weapons that are coming on board, you as a quarterback, Julian Sayin is never going to be confused with Lamar Jackson. Let's put it that way. But the bottom line is you want to get the ball in their hands. I mean, as much as anything else. But here's him talking about, as the old saying goes, that clock ticking in your head about when to hold it, when to fold it, and take off running. That's something you can mentally work on even as the spring goes along.
Yeah, I think I'm very comfortable with just having that clock in my head of knowing when to this ball needs to get out or nothing's there, you got to take off. So I think I'm still improving that, but I think I'm very comfortable in that aspect of having that internal clock in my head, knowing when the block is breaking down.
How's this team melding? This has been
as and his quarterback, we watched him mature as a leader as the season went on last year. One of those things was, hey, you know what? Other players looking around at him going, this guy's special, man, when it comes to putting the football on the money. Those guys don't just grow on trees. But now this is, he's a third year player now. He transferred from Alabama 3 years ago after Nick Saban retired, spent the year under Will Howard, and then started last year. And now he's expected to be one of the leaders of the team. And the quarterback always is, right? When you get right down to it, the quarterback is, quote unquote, the captain, whether he wants to be or not. But let's just hear him. I think it was my buddy Dom Taberry asking him just about that aspect of maturing just as a leader, meaning as somebody who not only guys listen to, but he's willing to say things and that come to mind. So here he is, Julian Sayin, talking about that aspect.
I think it's been a fun off season. Getting to know these guys, and I think we mesh well together. It's been a lot of fun just within the weight room and challenging each other and competing and spending time outside the facility. So I think it'll be a good group, and I'm excited about it.
How about you as the leader? I mean, we saw you out there today. I mean, how does this year feel different from maybe last year?
I think I've been just trying to step up in the leadership role more. We have some returning guys on offense that have all kind of been trying to do that, and stepping up in the weight room, and just throughout the facility, just trying to be more of a leader.
Stay in the front row, Austin. Julian, what was your initial thoughts when Arthur Smith was brought in to be the coordinator, and what's something that you maybe have already picked up or learned from him?
Yeah, I was really excited about it. Coach Smith, obviously a great coach in the NFL, and someone I can learn a lot from. So it's been great spending time with him and learning from him and taking points from him. And he's calling the offense out there, so it's been great, and love working with him and excited to keep doing it.
Remember this will be Julian Sayin's third offensive coordinator in 3 years at Ohio State. Obviously Chip Kelly when Julian Sayin was redshirting for one of another term. And then, of course, Brian Hartline last year, who's now the head coach at South Florida. And Ryan Day reached out to Arthur Smith and brought him in, a former head coach in the National Football League with the Atlanta Falcons. He was offensive coordinator at Pittsburgh before there was a regime change at Pittsburgh after this past season. But just getting Julian's perspective on having a third offensive coordinator in 3 years, what does that mean to him from a development standpoint?
It's always cool to have new perspectives. And football, there's so many different ways that people see it. So it was good. We watched some of my tape last year, and I was just kind of talking him through. We were just talking ball, and it's been a fun offseason with him for sure.
With him coming in, and he kind of, I'm assuming he went back and watched a lot of your film from last year. Like, what was it like kind of having someone with a fresh set of eyes kind of review it, tell you some things? Like, was it different than even you or Coach Fessler or Coach Day, like to have someone who wasn't here last year to kind of go through that with you?
Yeah, it was. It's always cool to have new perspectives. And football. There's so many different ways that people see it. So it was good. We watched some of my tape last year, and I was just kind of talking him through. We were just talking ball. And it's been a fun offseason with him for sure.
To follow up, using your legs and kind of the internal clock and all that. Like, I know last year you guys had a couple practices where the quarterbacks were live, but like, how do you best try to practice that in a setting where obviously it's not the same as a game where you're not getting hit? Like, is there a way that you can kind of go through that even in a practice setting?
Yeah, I think you just have to feel the rush and feel when the pocket's breaking down. It definitely comes with experience from being in the fire, being in games. But you just have to feel that pocket and see because you have to be looking at the defense and seeing your guys at the downfield. So I think it's just having a good feel for the pocket and your pocket presence.
Yeah, that was Stefan Kreisnick asking a couple of those questions. Interesting because you got to practice it. It's got to be instinct that ABC run. Not out there on the field thinking, hey, maybe I should run now. You want it as instinctual or as reactive as possible, and that'll be the interesting part. But as we get into this next little clip from Julian Sayin, he understands, man. He's got Jeremiah Smith. He's got freshman Chris Henry coming on. He's got transfer wide receivers Devin McEwen from UT San Antonio, Kyle Parker from LSU. He's got running backs. Bo Jackson and Isaiah West aren't getting to take part in the contact part of spring football. They've been out there running through some drills, et cetera, but they had off-season touch-up surgery, so to speak, on shoulders, et cetera, to get them ready for the fall. But, you've got Legend Bay, who you've heard us talk about a lot if you're paying attention to the media about the buzz about Legend Bay, for example, a guy that could be, as Ryan Day said, most reminds him of a fella he only saw fleetingly at Ohio State, Curtis Samuel, just that multi-talent threat that could be a running back one play and a slot receiver or wide receiver the next. So you can't, when you're the quarterback at Ohio State and you've got the passing arm that Julian Sayin has, you still got to lean on those weapons. And that's what sets Julian Sayin apart from any other quarterback in the country is his accuracy and his ability to get the ball to those weapons. So let's see what he had to say when asked about those new weapons that have come on board for Ohio State.
All three of those guys are going to be really good receivers for us. Devin and Kyle, it's been great to have those guys as transfers, and they've meshed really well. And Devin and Kyle both got a lot of speed, and they'll go in and they make great blocks for us. So I'm excited about them. And then Chris he's been great so far. As a freshman, he's been making great plays. I'm excited about him.
And just, is there anything that you and Ryan maybe Arthur talk about, like any extra responsibilities you get now that you've gone through this before and you are a bit of a veteran? Is there any extra responsibilities of things you're being able to do at the line of scrimmage that maybe you weren't privy to having last year?
Yeah, I think we've done a lot. Given the quarterback a lot of responsibility at line of scrimmage within our new kind of what we've been running these past few days. I think there's that, and then it also comes with just having more leadership out there and really just taking command of the offense and hey, this is the route that I want you at, and this is the depth and this is the timing because I'm the one out there throwing it to you, and this is how it's going to go. So I think just having that and coaching up some of these younger guys to get on the same page with us, so we're clicking because we get the ball in some of those guys' hands. They're very dangerous.
Yeah. Previous question was from Stephen Means and followed up by this one from Bill Landis. I like to give people credit because these questions, you get few questions of these guys in these these major press conferences, and you have to take the answers of and you hope a question you wanted to ask is asked. And at the end, I jammed one in there just about the size. And speaking of Julian, he says he's gained 5 to 10 pounds, but you can tell he's reapportioned to a certain extent under the body by Mick Marotti through the 3 months leading up to this to this spring, and it's going to be even more so probably between the end of spring and the start of preseason camp. But then the other thing you want to see from a quarterback finally is you want to see him have the ability, as Bill Landis asks him, you want to see him have the ability, not just from the coaches, but his own mind, to go out and make a play. You know, when all else breaks down, just make a play, because that's what separates the great ones and the elite ones, the guys who take you to championships. You saw Will Howard assert himself in the playoffs in 2024. Just go out there and run when you just maybe you can just make a quarterback draw all on your own. You know, no one knowing it's coming, including your own teammates. Right on down the line, there are all kinds of ways. Fernando Mendoza, that was a called quarterback draw. That was the decisive play in the national championship win over Miami this past season. But the bottom line is just having that mental freedom to just play your game, because finally it does come down to, among elite quarterbacks, just having a feel for what's needed right now at this very second, not moment, this very second. And so that's where I think you will see Julian Sayin make a big time advance this season. The willingness, not only the ability to run, but the willingness to run and or throw and or get out on the edge and to scramble, et cetera. We saw some of that last year. Let's don't act like he was just, this a robot out there last year. He was not that at all. He got more and more comfortable as the season went on. But let's just see finally what he had to say about that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be an important part of the game. And, Coach Vessler tells us that elite quarterbacks are great when the situations are bad. So just being able to get us out of bad situations and make plays for our offense, I think is going to be important.
You always enjoy these times with the players to get to ask them certain questions face to face, so to speak, or face to 45 faces, so to speak, when it comes to Ohio State football, which, by my estimation, probably has the largest media contingent covering it of any major college team. And with that, besides that, most NFL teams, there aren't as many reporters sitting there asking you questions day to day in almost any other area in the place in the country than there is Ohio State football. So we always enjoy Julian Sayin. I think he's getting better at answering questions. So like I said, he's never going to be a tattletale or just a guy that sit there and just go off in a media session. That's hard to believe that will ever happen with him. He's a controlled young man, chooses his words usually wisely and uses few of them if he can. So always appreciate any moments with Julian Sayin. I appreciate these moments with you. And thank you for joining me and Matt Wilhelm today. And, by osmosis, Julian Sayin. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, and I think my man Clay Hall will be back. We'll see you then. Shh. By the way, Clay has left the room. I wanted to let you folks in on a real bargain out there in the world of simulator golf. The Back Nine Golf, which is located at 2820 Fishinger Road in Upper Arlington, has a hell of a holiday box available to you right now. The value is nearly $300, but your price is $150 if you jump online. That's almost 50% off if you jump online at Columbus at theback9golf.com. That's their email address. Their website is theback9golf.com/Columbus-upper-Arlington-OH/ That's a long address, but just write it down a couple times watching it. And you can also call them at 614-362-7888. Parentheses PUTT, PUTT. But the bottom line is one of the new ultra modern simulators that you can find in the greater Columbus area, and it's really right there in the middle of Upper Arlington. I know Tito Thidoff and I hopped in there the other day. I think it was 16 degrees outside. There was snow and ice everywhere, and we played Pebble Beach, and we did it in less than an hour. So it's one of the great bargains going out there, and with this with this holiday box, you get 1 month of Birdie membership. You get Back Nine branded golf balls. You get cozy Back Nine beanie, and you get premium Back Nine towel. So that's a hell of a deal because basically it's unlimited golf. It's 24/7. You get a code to get you in the door, and then you can go from there. And it's definitely fun. It's the premises are pristine. I know we had a great time. We even played closest to the hole, a few shots on number 7, famed number 7 short par 3 at Pebble Beach the other day, and had a great time doing it. So if you're looking for that last minute gift for a golfer that you love, or yourself that you love, that you're a golfer, nothing wrong with giving yourself a gift at this time of the year. That's the Back Nine Golf holiday box, and it's only a limited time, and as you can imagine, there are only a few available. Quantities are tight, so check in at theback9golf.com.